Have you ever witnessed a bond so profound that it defies every expectation, even when everything seems lost? This is the story of a devoted German shepherd named Kaiser and the family that tried to leave him behind. Little did they know that their choice would unleash a chain of events so hauntingly powerful. It would bring them face to face with their deepest regrets, their rawest fears, and the depths of loyalty that only a dog can possess. And what Kaiser does next will fill your heart with wonder and awe, leaving you with tears in your eyes and, perhaps, a renewed faith in second chances. They say a dog's love is unconditional. It's a kind of love that breaks through barriers of language, species, and circumstance. It's the sort of loyalty that stands stalwart against waves of adversity, unwavering, no matter the storms it faces. But sometimes, in the hectic swirl of human life, people forget this. We forget the power of that silent companionship. This is the tale of the Patterson family and their German shepherd, Kaiser, a story of heartbreak, regret, atonement, and ultimately a love that transcends all the reasons that had once driven them apart. John Patterson was once the kind of father who believed in tradition. He woke up at dawn, pressed his shirt with neat lines, and drove to his job at a local insurance firm. The family home in Glendale, California, had a carefully trimmed yard, potted plants by the porch, and an American flag fluttering from a small pole near the driveway. Lisa Patterson, his wife, was the nurturer, the glue that held them together. She had an easy laugh that could penetrate the dimmest clouds of doubt, and the gentle way she had with their children made her beloved by everyone, from neighbors to teachers to her extended family back in Minnesota. They had 2 children, Emily and Noah. Emily was turning 15 in the fall, tall and lanky with earnest brown eyes, the kind that mirrored her mother's gentle spirit. She was studious, creative, and at times insecure about her place in the world. Noah, still floating in the realm of boyhood at 10, found wonder in every bug in the yard, every new video game, and every improbable dream. In the midst of these 4 humans lived Kaiser, the German shepherd they had adopted from a friend's litter 3 years ago. Kaiser had been Noah's idea because the puppy was so regal even when he was small. The name stuck, and Kaiser grew into it as he developed the noble stride and steadfast heart typical of his breed. When John would return home from work, it was Kaiser who ran to the door first, tail wagging in absolute glee. Whether John had a good or bad day, the greeting was always the same: unwavering love, a bright-eyed stare, and a cold nose nuzzling at his hand. Emily would offer her father a shy smile, Lisa a warm hug, and Noah an explosion of excitement about his day, but Kaiser's welcome was the calm, consistent center for John, something he'd come to rely upon more than he realized. Then came the gradual collapse of John's carefully woven world. It started with whispers of layoffs at the insurance firm, subtle but ever-growing. John tried to ignore them at first, certain that his department was too essential. Lisa noticed his restlessness as he clutched the television remote with sweaty palms in the evenings, scanning the local news for updates on job cuts and economic downturns. One day, John returned home earlier than usual, eyes hollow, footsteps dragging. No cheerful greeting from Kaiser could lift the despair that seemed to cloak him. The firm had cut half the staff in his division. His position was gone. Suddenly, the mortgage payments felt insurmountable. Bills stacked in messy piles on the kitchen counter. At first, they tried to keep up a semblance of normality. Lisa took up a temporary job at Redwood Veterinary Hospital in Glendale, registering patients and helping with basic administrative tasks. She had always loved animals, and even though it was an unglamorous role, it provided some income. John, however, was drowning in shame. The man who once prided himself on being a provider was grappling with the humiliating reality that he couldn't immediately find a new job. Tensions rose at dinner. Emily and Noah couldn't understand why a dog that had once been showered in new toys and premium Purina dog food now had strictly rationed meals. Groceries were measured out. Hand-me-downs became the norm. And more than that, Kaiser's presence, which once felt so comforting, began to chafe at the raw nerve of John's frustration. One night, Lisa found John standing in the living room, looking at Kaiser. Their German shepherd lay near the couch, ears pricked, tail sweeping against the floor in slow arcs. "John?" she asked softly. He turned to her with an anguished look. "He's expensive to keep. What are you saying?" Lisa stepped back, pressing a hand to her throat. "Vet bills, food bills, they add up. I've been trying to do the math. We might have to. Don't even think about it," she said, voice trembling. He's part of this family. Yeah, but maybe we should consider options. Either a cheaper brand of food or maybe find him a new home, a place that can afford him." His words hung in the air like a storm cloud. Lisa felt the burn of tears behind her eyes. She shook her head firmly. "That's the last resort," she said. "We'll cut expenses elsewhere." Kaiser tilted his head, sensing the tension, though he couldn't fathom the threat of abandonment. All he knew was that something wasn't right, and his instincts told him to stay alert, to comfort his family whenever possible. Financial strain wore the family down. Lisa tried picking up extra shifts at the vet hospital, sometimes leaving Emily in charge of Noah until she got home. John traveled to job interviews, driving the old sedan from Glendale to neighboring towns, only to face rejections that chipped away at his confidence. Meanwhile, Kaiser felt the emotional weather patterns in the household. If an argument was brewing, he would place himself between John and Lisa, big brown eyes looking up as if to ask, "Can't we just be together?" Yet over time, John's irritation seemed to target Kaiser with increasing frequency. He would snap, "Kaiser, get out of here," or "Kaiser, go to your crate." The dog, baffled, would linger in a corner, maintaining his silent watch. Emily noticed. She was old enough to feel the pang of heartbreak. In hushed moments, she would stroke Kaiser's fur, murmur comforting words, and slip him treats she bought with her own allowance. She was loyal in the way only a teenager who has known heartbreak can be caught between her father's temper and the dog's confusion. She couldn't stand to see Kaiser relegated to the side. Lisa was the buffer, trying her hardest to keep the peace. But she too was only human, stretched between job demands, her children's needs, and her husband's despair. Tired nights turned into sob-filled early mornings when the world was asleep, and she felt free to let her tears flow. Kaiser, half asleep at her feet, would sometimes lift his head at the sound of her muffled crying. His ears would perk, and he'd approach, nuzzling her with gentle empathy. She would pat him, grateful for the unwavering companionship, but powerless against the mounting pressures. Over time, they started skipping walks. The dog park outings that once happened every Saturday morning vanished. Kaiser's nails grew slightly too long, clacking on the hardwood floors, as the family rarely took him to Redwood Veterinary Hospital for grooming or checkups unless absolutely necessary. Everything that once felt normal was replaced by corners cut, an existence whittled down to the bare minimum. The family, in turn, began to whittle away from Kaiser. The final straw arrived in the form of a dreaded letter. It came in a plain, windowed envelope with the cold insignia of the bank. John opened it by the mailbox, expecting another reminder about the mortgage. What he found was a stark notice of foreclosure. They had 30 days to settle their outstanding debts or vacate their beloved home. He trudged inside, feeling a primal fear coil in his stomach. Lisa was at the kitchen table, trying to help Noah with homework, while Emily busied herself reading a school novel. John sank into a chair and showed her the letter without a word. Silence took hold of the kitchen. Lisa swallowed. We'll find a way, right? Her voice trembled. I'm picking up as many hours as I can. You're still looking for jobs. I've been looking for months, John bit out, voice harsh. I can't. I'm sorry. Emily and Noah exchanged glances. Emily, always the quiet observer, saw the devastation etched into her father's features. She realized, with a lurch of fear, that they were closer to losing their home than she'd imagined. Lisa rubbed at her temples. Maybe we can borrow from my sister or talk to the bank about a loan modification. John's frustration erupted. We're drowning in interest, Lisa. And your sister can barely support her own family. We can't keep living in a fantasy. At this, Kaiser trotted into the kitchen, nails scratching on the tile floor. He placed himself between them as if to ease the rising tension. John jerked away, eyes brimming with tears that were as much of anger as they were of sorrow. Then, in a calmer but deeply weary tone, he delivered the words that would set off the chain of events. No one could have anticipated. I think we need to let Kaiser go. Lisa stared at him. Emily gasped. Noah's face wrinkled in confusion. What do you mean? The boy said in a small voice. John closed his eyes, exhaling. We can't do this. We can't afford the food. The vet costs everything. We might end up in an apartment that doesn't even accept dogs. It's not fair to him. It's not fair to us. But Dad, Kaiser is part of the family. Emily's voice was trembling. John's expression wavered between guilt and resolution. We can't keep him, he said quietly. I'm sorry. Lisa didn't speak. She was too stunned, her mind whirling. She knew deep inside that John's words came from despair, not cruelty. But there it was, the first crack that threatened to break them all, perhaps irreversibly. The following days were overshadowed by the unspoken knowledge that Kaiser's time with the Pattersons might be ending. Noah retreated to his room, hugging his stuffed rabbit now, a sad stand-in for the dog he adored. Emily scoured the internet, looking for ways to help. She researched low-cost vet clinics and free kibble distributions at local shelters. Lisa tried to have a mature conversation with John about exploring every possible avenue before making a final decision. But life rarely waits for families to deliberate in peace. The bank's deadlines pressed forward mercilessly. John's unemployment checks barely covered basic groceries. The tension grew, and with it, a wedge formed around Kaiser's presence. When Lisa mentioned the possibility of rehoming Kaiser with a friend, John refused. He claimed none of their friends were financially secure or prepared for a dog of his size and temperament. Lisa suggested contacting Redwood Veterinary Hospital in case a client was interested in adopting, but Redwood's waiting list for fosters was miles long, and John had little faith in a positive outcome. In desperation, John decided to take matters into his own hands. One night, while the rest of the family slept in fitful slumber, he roamed the house restlessly. Bills, rejection letters, and eviction notices seemed to swirl in his mind. He glanced at Kaiser, dozing by the sliding glass doors, and his heart twisted in guilt. Then, as if possessed by a final wave of determination, John resolved to do something drastic. He'd drive Kaiser away and leave him at a no-kill animal shelter outside the city. It was better than letting the dog see the family unravel under the weight of debts. Or so he justified to himself. At dawn, John rose and quietly slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Lisa. He grabbed Kaiser's leash and coaxed the dog into the family's old sedan. Kaiser, always eager for any outing, hopped in with excited innocence. John drove in a silence as thick as the early morning fog that clung to Glendale's streets. He headed out of town, past the familiar Redwood Veterinary Hospital where Lisa worked. and kept going. Kaiser stuck his head out the window, sniffing the cool air, unaware of his fate. The sign for the Glendale city limits disappeared behind them as they merged onto a lonely highway. John's grip on the steering wheel was tight, knuckles white. Every mile deepened the knot of guilt in his chest. Occasionally, he glanced at Kaiser in the rearview mirror. The German Shepherd met his eyes with quiet trust, and that trust felt like a dagger to John's heart. But he steeled himself, rationalizing that it was better for the dog to be placed in a new home rather than endure the impending chaos. At last, he turned onto a gravel road that led to a large animal shelter known for rehoming dogs of all breeds. He'd called them once, learning they usually had space, but they also had a donation fee for owner surrenders. With money so tight, John felt trapped, though part of him was ready to pay that last bit of cash if it meant Kaiser was safe. He pulled up to the chain-link gate. A sign read, "Temporarily closed, maintenance work." The gate was locked. John cursed softly under his breath. He honked, but no one came. He stepped out, peering through the fence. The property looked deserted. Construction barriers and a few large trucks were scattered about. No staff in sight. A new wave of panic seized John. He had come too far, literally and emotionally, to turn back now. The family was counting on him to do something. Maybe Kaiser would be better off wandering to a nearby farm or property where someone would take him in. It was a cruel, heartbreaking thought, but John was at the end of his rope. He pulled the sedan to the side of the road. Kaiser hopped out willingly, trotting alongside John, tail wagging. John swallowed hard. He knelt, feeling tears prick the back of his eyes. "I'm sorry, boy," he whispered. I can't do this anymore." He unclasped the leash and patted Kaiser. For a second, Kaiser just stared, ears alert. Then John stood up, rushed back to the car, and slammed the door. He started the engine, hands shaking. For a moment, Kaiser followed alongside, trotting hopefully, not understanding the abrupt distance. John pressed the gas, tears streaming down his face, ignoring the whimpering bark. The dog, left behind on that gravel road, became a shrinking figure in the rear-view mirror. It was done. When John returned, the house was still quiet. Lisa was in the kitchen, sipping her morning coffee with puffy eyes that suggested she hadn't slept well. She saw John walk in alone, carrying an empty leash. Her heart froze. "John, where's Kaiser?" He couldn't meet her gaze. I took him to an animal shelter," he said softly, voice shaking. "We can't take care of him anymore." For a moment, she just stared, stunned. A mixture of betrayal and sorrow bled across her features. Emily emerged from her bedroom, eyes heavy with sleep. She took in the scene, saw the leash, and panic shot across her face. "Dad, where's Kaiser?" John hesitated, and Lisa couldn't hold back. "Your father took him away," she said, voice trembling with tears. "He didn't even discuss it with me." Emily let out a cry, half anger, half despair. "No, you promised we'd talk it through." She rushed toward the front door, as if somehow Kaiser would be there, waiting. "How could you do that?" Noah, awakened by the commotion, appeared in the hallway, eyes wide. "Kaiser?" he asked, voice shaky. "Dad, why?" John's shoulders sagged. "We can't afford him," he murmured. "I'm sorry. I did what I had to do." Lisa turned away, tears slipping down her cheeks. She pressed a palm to her mouth, a wave of nausea overwhelming her. Emily ran to her bedroom, sobbing. Noah crumpled to the floor, burying his face in his hands. In that moment, the Patterson household felt irreparably broken. Back on that lonely gravel road, Kaiser lingered, bewildered. He sniffed at the lingering scent of the sedan's exhaust, listening to its fading rumble. He had never been truly alone like this before. Confusion churned in his canine mind. His family was everything to him. Why had they left him? For hours, Kaiser wandered the edges of the closed shelter, occasionally pawing at the locked fence. No one was around. Hunger gnawed at his belly. The sun rose higher, beating down on him. Dust coated his pores. Eventually, Kaiser heard the rumbling of machinery from the other side of the fence, but the men he glimpsed through the chain link paid him no mind. Instinct told him to find his way back, to go home. But home was miles away, beyond highways and unfamiliar roads. Still, a German shepherd's keen sense of direction and smell gave Kaiser a spark of hope. If he could find any trace of the path John had taken, he might follow it. So he began walking, occasionally trotting, along the edges of the gravel road. Dust kicked up around his paws, and dryness parched his throat. He ventured close to farmland, hearing the distant lowing of cows, the clucking of hens. At one point, he found a small pond where he lapped water gratefully. Another time, he sniffed around a barn, startling a flock of chickens. The farmer, a burly figure in overalls, emerged and shouted, "Get out to here!" Kaiser bounded away before the man could chase him. Evening approached, painting the sky orange and pink. Kaiser's stomach cramped with hunger, and his paws ached, but the thought of returning to Lisa, Emily, and Noah kept him going. He trekked across fields, weaving in and out of tree lines, guided by scents of civilization car exhaust, roadside diners, anything that felt vaguely like the Glendale he knew. By nightfall, he reached a stretch of highway, headlights whizzing by. He skirted the shoulder, panting heavily. A few cars slowed, uncertain about a stray dog on the roadside, but no one stopped. Eventually, Kaiser took shelter under an overpass, curled up and tried to sleep. His dreams were haunted by the memory of the Patterson home. He saw Emily's gentle eyes, Noah's playful grin, Lisa's loving touch, and even John's proud stance. How had it all vanished so quickly? But for a dog, living in the present is a survival skill. The next morning, Kaiser rose, stiff and exhausted, yet determined. He set off again, following the faint recollection of the road John had driven. With each step, he drew closer to Glendale, though the path was far from straight. Sometimes he'd rely on the smell of passing vehicles, sometimes on the faint chemical tang that indicated urban sprawl. Hunger sharpened his senses, hope fueled his perseverance. Back at the Patterson house, no one was the same after Kaiser's removal. Lisa spoke only in terse murmurs to John, heartbreak etched in her features. Emily refused to even look at her father, while Noah teetered between grief and confusion. John, for his part, was plagued by relentless guilt. Though rationally he told himself it was necessary, his conscience tormented him. He kept reliving the sight of Kaiser's trusting eyes in the rearview mirror. When Emily or Lisa brought it up, he retreated, claiming it was done and for the best. The truth, however, gnawed at him relentlessly. Lisa's shifts at Redwood Veterinary Hospital became her refuge. She focused on the animals, each wagging tail or purr, reminding her of Kaiser. Sometimes her co-workers asked if she'd gotten into a fight with John because her eyes were red, her expression distant. She kept her personal drama to herself, but it weighed on her. One afternoon, Emily and Lisa drove to the animal shelter John had mentioned, only to find the same locked gate and the sign about maintenance. A staff member approached them to say the facility was temporarily closed for renovations and had not accepted new animals for weeks. The staffer confirmed no one had arrived that morning or the day prior to surrender a German shepherd. That revelation hit Lisa like a punch. She looked at Emily, who burst into tears. "Where is he, then?" Emily cried. They drove around the area, combing back roads for any sign of Kaiser. They searched fields, asked passers-by nothing. Eventually, they returned home, hearts heavier than ever. John avoided their questions, claiming some confusion. "They might have opened, then closed again," he muttered. Lisa pressed him, but he insisted Kaiser was safe, perhaps coaxing half-lies to avoid telling them he'd left the dog by the roadside. "That's not good enough," Lisa snapped through tears. "We need to know he's okay." But John shut down, retreating to the bedroom. The next day, Noah packed his backpack with dog treats and posted handmade flyers around their block. The piece of paper read, "Missing German Shepherd named Kaiser," in crooked letters. A scribbled drawing of Kaiser's face was in the center. Underneath, Noah wrote, "Please call if you see him. 555 2183. Emily joined him, handing out the flyers to whoever would take one. Neighbors expressed sympathy, but no one had seen Kaiser. The heartbreak only grew, overshadowed by the looming threat of foreclosure. Every day in that house felt darker than the last, with no glimmer of hope in sight. Kaiser moved slowly, guided by scents and the flickers of memory. The pads on his paws grew tender. He scavenged for scraps behind gas stations, rummaged in trash bins when hunger became unbearable. Sometimes he'd go a whole day without finding more than a morsel. People came and went. Some tried to approach him with gentle voices, worried about a lost dog. Others hurled rocks or shouted. Kaiser stayed wary, but not aggressive. His heart still brimmed with a loyalty that refused to die. He had a home. He had to find it. One morning, after another night beneath a bridge, Kaiser caught a familiar smell. It was faint, but enough to stir his memory. He followed it to a stretch of road near Glendale's outskirts. The scent had notes of exhaust, yes, but also the intangible signature of something that reminded him of John's car, or perhaps the environment near Redwood Veterinary Hospital. Step by step, he ventured deeper into the city's suburban sprawl. Houses with manicured lawns appeared, and with them the flicker of recognition. He couldn't be certain, but it felt like he was close to the territory he used to roam with John during weekend errands. A wave of emotion overtook Kaiser. His ears perked up, tail swishing in cautious optimism. He pressed forward, ignoring his throbbing paws. By mid-afternoon, he recognized a landmark, the grocery store with the large red sign, the same place Lisa used to shop for produce. Another mile or two, and he'd be near the Pattersons' neighborhood. However, exhaustion sapped him. His limbs shook, the midday sun was scorching, and he desperately needed water. Kaiser limped into a small neighborhood park and found a faucet by the public restrooms. A good Samaritan, an older woman out for a walk, saw him lapping up the trickle and gently placed a plastic bowl for him, filling it with fresh water. "There you go, poor boy," she murmured. She spotted his worn collar, the tag missing. She tried to check for any identifying information, but the nameplate had fallen off. After offering him a few dog treats from her pocket, she had a terrier at home. She rubbed Kaiser's ears gently. He rested for an hour in the shade, recharging his energy before pressing on. The sweet smell of home was beckoning. Meanwhile, Emily sat by her bedroom window, eyes scanning the street. Every day since Kaiser was gone, she'd found reasons to watch for him, a faint hope that he might just appear, tail wagging. Noah was beside her, hugging a threadbare pillow. Their vigilance paid off in the late afternoon when Emily gasped. "Noah!" she whispered, pointing at a shape in the distance. It was a dog, limping slightly, making its way down the sidewalk. At first glance, it was just another stray, but then the shape solidified. The coloration, the gait, the perk of the ears, Emily's heart exploded with recognition. "Kaiser!" She screamed, scrambling to her feet. She nearly knocked the lamp off her bedside table in her haste. Noah tore after her as she dashed down the hall, bounding down the stairs. Lisa, startled in the living room, jumped up. "What is it? Kaiser's outside!" Emily shouted, tears flooding her eyes. She flung the front door open, heart pounding like a drum. And there he was, a tired, dust-caked, an exhausted German shepherd standing on the sidewalk, gazing at the house as though it were the gates to heaven. For a long moment, Kaiser just stared, as if uncertain this was real. Then Emily sprinted forward with a sob, throwing her arms around the dog's neck, tears raining onto his dirt-matted fur. Noah joined, hugging Kaiser's flank and crying into his side. Lisa caught up, knees weakening at the sight of the dog's condition. Kaiser looked thinner, rib bones slightly visible, his once lustrous coat dull. His paws were raw, a testament to the punishing journey he'd undertaken. Yet his tail wagged feverishly, joy radiating from a face that seemed to say, "I found you. I am home." Lisa pressed a hand to her mouth. "Oh my God, Kaiser," she whispered, kneeling to inspect him. She felt a surge of relief and guilt. She ushered the children and the dog into the house, hurrying to the kitchen to fetch water and some leftover chicken. John, who was in the garage wrestling with broken boxes to prepare for an eventual move, heard the commotion and stepped into the house. He froze upon seeing Kaiser. The dog's eyes locked on John's. For a tense moment, the family was silent, waiting to see what would happen. Kaiser took a hesitant step forward. John's expression twisted in heartbreak as the German shepherd approached him, tail wagging with forgiving love. Suddenly, John dropped to his knees, burying his face in the dog's fur, his shoulders shaking with soundless sobs. "I'm sorry," he whispered, the words muffled. "I'm so sorry." Kaiser responded by licking John's cheek. For the first time in ages, John wept without restraint. That evening, Lisa insisted they take Kaiser to Redwood Veterinary Hospital. She called in a favor from one of the vets on staff, Dr. Emily Parker, who agreed to stay after hours to examine Kaiser. In the quiet exam room, Dr. Parker weighed him, inspected his raw paw pads, and found mild dehydration, some scratches, and a few ticks. Despite the battered appearance, Kaiser was in surprisingly decent health, all things considered. Lisa stood by, tears glimmering in her eyes. Emily and Noah watched anxiously, and John lingered near the door, guilt still radiating from him. Dr. Parker administered fluids, cleaned the scrapes, and recommended an antibiotic for infection prevention. As they left the hospital, Kaiser bandaged and a bit woozy from the vaccines he'd needed updating, Lisa turned to John. "He's part of our family," she said, voice trembling. "We can't do this to him again." John nodded, eyes downcast. "I know, I'm so ashamed." Emily added, "We'll figure out something. I'll get a part-time job if I have to. We can't let him go." Noah chimed in, "He's my best friend." John felt tears threaten again. He put an arm around Emily and rustled Noah's hair. "You shouldn't have to do that," he said quietly. I'm sorry." Lisa's face softened. "We're in this together, John. We might lose the house, but we can't lose each other too. And that includes Kaiser." It was a moment of unity that the family hadn't felt in months. Even as they drove home, the spectre of foreclosure still loomed, but there was a renewed determination in all their hearts. Over the next week, the Pattersons rallied around Kaiser, tending to his wounds and showering him with love. They fed him small, nutritious meals multiple times a day, ensuring his stomach adjusted after the period of scarcity. Emily took on more responsibility, walking Kaiser each morning before school. Noah read stories to him in the evenings, as though Kaiser were a younger sibling. Lisa soothed him with gentle pats, whispering apologies that she hoped he understood. John was a changed man. Though he struggled with personal shame, he vowed to never again betray the dog's trust. He poured what little energy he had left after job hunting into repairing the dog crate, ensuring Kaiser had a safe and comfortable space. He rummaged around and found leftover dog toys, washing them so Kaiser had something fresh to play with. The once somber house began to feel alive again. Laughter returned, cautious but real. At times, the burden of finances weighed heavily, but it was tempered by the knowledge that they had each other. All 5 of them, including Kaiser. Lisa and John sat down at the kitchen table night after night, poring over financial statements, exploring bankruptcy options, or searching for a smaller rental home that might allow dogs. "We'll manage," Lisa said resolutely. "We might be broke, but we'll be together." John squeezed her hand. "Yes," he agreed softly, "we'll be together." Despite the gloom of an uncertain future, the family embraced a sense of unity they had lost. Kaiser's return reminded them of the values they once held dear: loyalty, compassion, and the willingness to stand by each other, no matter the cost. It happened on a quiet Sunday afternoon, just when the Pattersons started to believe life might be under control again. Emily was in her bedroom, finishing homework. Noah was in the backyard playing catch with Kaiser, although, in truth, it was mostly Kaiser bounding after the ball and returning it proudly to a giggling Noah. Lisa had gone out for a quick grocery run, and John was tinkering with a faulty lawnmower in the garage. The day was mild, sun filtering through the palm trees that lined their block. Birds chirped, and a distant hum of a lawn trimmer gave the air a peaceful, suburban vibe. None of them knew how quickly that peace would shatter. A reckless driver, later discovered to be under the influence, came barreling down their street. The screech of tires preceded the chaos by mere seconds. Noah, entirely unaware, was near the front gate, ball in hand, about to throw it to Kaiser. As the speeding car swerved, it hopped the curb, ploughing onto the sidewalk. Everything happened in a blink. Kaiser, halfway through the yard, saw the car's lethal path heading straight for Noah. Without hesitation, the German shepherd lunged forward in a flash of fur and muscle. Emily, hearing the screech and the roar of an engine, rushed to the window. She saw the horror unfold. Noah stood frozen, eyes wide. Kaiser slammed into him with just enough force to knock the boy out of the car's direct path. But Kaiser himself couldn't dodge the front bumper. A sickening thud echoed down the street. The car smashed into a mailbox and a fence post, finally grinding to a halt with smoke pouring from under its hood. Noah tumbled onto the grass, unhurt except for scraped knees and a bruised elbow. But Kaiser lay limp on the sidewalk, whimpering. Time seemed to freeze. Emily bolted outside, screaming. John, hearing the crash, sprinted from the garage. Neighbors rushed to the scene, some yelling at the driver, others calling 911. Noah crawled toward Kaiser, tears streaming, crying, "No, no, no!" John dropped to his knees beside the dog, heart pounding. Kaiser's chest rose and fell unevenly, his eyes dazed. Blood matted his fur, staining the sidewalk. Adrenaline coursed through John as he tried to comfort the trembling creature who had just saved his son's life. Sirens wailed in the distance. Lisa's car screeched to a halt behind the curb, groceries forgotten. She dashed to her family, her breath catching in sobs when she saw Kaiser's condition. "Oh God, no," she cried, pressing her hands over her mouth. John looked up at her, fear etched into his face. "We have to get him to Redwood Veterinary Hospital, now!" They loaded Kaiser into the back of Lisa's car as gently as they could, using a blanket to staunch the bleeding. The dog whimpered, eyes rolling back in pain. Emily and Noah squeezed in beside him, tearful but determined to keep him calm. Lisa sped through Glendale's streets, hazard lights flashing, ignoring the speed limits. When they arrived at Redwood Veterinary Hospital, Dr. Parker rushed out with a team of technicians. They carefully transferred Kaiser onto a stretcher. The children tried to follow, but John held them back as the staff whisked the German shepherd into the treatment area. The waiting room became their vigil site. Noah slumped in a chair, face buried in Emily's shoulder. Emily's eyes were red, tears falling steadily. John paced, hands shaking, replaying the horrifying moment of impact. Lisa stood near the front desk, phone clenched in her hand, calling the police station to give a statement about the drunk driver. Time crawled. Minutes stretched into an hour, then two. Dr. Parker emerged periodically with updates. Kaiser had multiple fractures, internal bleeding, and required immediate surgery to stabilize him. There was a chance he wouldn't make it through the night. John sank to a chair, pressing the heels of his palms into his eyes. The thought of losing Kaiser now, after everything they'd been through, was too cruel to bear. Lisa knelt beside him, tears in her eyes, and Emily and Noah clustered close. They prayed, some silently, some aloud, for a miracle. Even the staff at Redwood Veterinary Hospital, many of whom had come to know Lisa, extended their compassion, offering hugs and murmured words of encouragement. At one point, Dr. Parker approached them with a look of solemn determination. "The surgery is risky," she said softly, "but we'll do our best. He's a fighter, and if anyone can pull through this, it's Kaiser." Their hearts clung to that hope. The surgery lasted well into the night, hours of painstaking effort by the veterinary team. The Pattersons refused to leave the waiting room, despite the staff's gentle urging to go home and rest. Each minute felt like a lifetime. Every passing sound from behind the doors made them flinch. Finally, close to midnight, Dr. Parker emerged. She looked exhausted, but offered a small smile. "He's alive," she said. "We managed to stop the internal bleeding. He'll need a lot of recovery time, and we're not out of the woods yet, but he's stable for now." Relief washed over them. Emily and Noah hugged each other, tears flowing anew, this time in gratitude. John sank to his knees, burying his face in his hands as Lisa gently rubbed his shoulders. Dr. Parker continued, "We'll keep him here for at least a week. He'll need physical therapy and the cost." She hesitated, knowing their financial situation. "We'll work out a payment plan. We'll figure something out." John's eyes brimmed with tears. He nodded, voice quivering. "Anything. We'll do anything. Because how do you put a price on the life of a dog who had just saved your son?" Word spread around Glendale about Kaiser's heroic act. Neighbors who had once merely waved hello from a distance now visited the Pattersons with flowers, cards, and offers of help. Some set up a small donation fund to help with Kaiser's medical bills. Children at Noah's school shared a jar labeled "For Kaiser," dropping in coins and crumpled dollar bills. Emily's classmates organized a bake sale. Even Redwood Veterinary Hospital allowed Lisa to work off part of the bills by assisting beyond her regular hours. Dr. Parker launched a social media post about Kaiser's bravery, and messages of support poured in. People shared stories of their own dogs, times when man's best friend had gone to extraordinary lengths for their family. The community's empathy breathed new life into the Pattersons. For once, they didn't feel alone in their struggles. Despite the looming threat of foreclosure, a sense of solidarity lifted their spirits. Kaiser remained in intensive care, slowly mending. Dr. Parker was astounded by his resilience. "He's got such a strong will," she told Lisa. One day, after the dog successfully stood up for the first time post-surgery, "I've rarely seen a dog fight this hard." Lisa smiled through tears. "He's never given up on us," she said, "not once." Visiting hours at Redwood Veterinary Hospital became cherished daily rituals. The family would gather around Kaiser's kennel, speaking softly, stroking him gently. The dog's eyes shone with recognition. His tail thumped whenever Emily or Noah crouched beside him, whispering encouraging words. John often stayed late, apologizing to Kaiser in hushed tones. "You didn't deserve what I did. I promise, I'll never let you go again." The dog's ears would flicker, a sign that he heard and forgave. Gradually, Kaiser regained his appetite. He devoured small meals of soft food. Dr. Parker removed his bandages, revealing stitches and healing bruises. A physical therapist taught him gentle exercises to regain mobility in his injured leg. The process was painstaking, but Kaiser's determination never wavered. All the while, the Pattersons learned a new language of gratitude. Gratitude for the donations that trickled in, for the prayers offered, for Dr. Parker's unwavering dedication. For each moment they still had Kaiser in their lives. Even John and Lisa's marriage found a renewed strength in these trials. They realized that, yes, they might lose the house, but their family bond was unbreakable if they prioritized love. above all else. Financially, times were still dire, but Lisa learned that Redwood Veterinary Hospital was hiring a full-time assistant. She applied and got the position. Her hours increased, and though it wasn't a fortune, it contributed more steady income. John found a part-time job at a hardware store, bridging the gap while he continued the search for a full-time office position. In a surprising turn of events, an old acquaintance of Lisa's from college learned of their foreclosure plight and offered the family a small, dog-friendly house. He owned for a fraction of the usual rent, at least until they got back on their feet. It was a humbling yet life-saving gesture. The Pattersons saw a glimmer of a future where they could keep Kaiser, maintain stability, and begin anew. After weeks of recovery, the day finally arrived for Kaiser to return home. The entire Patterson family piled into the car, hearts fluttering with anticipation. Dr. Parker gave them a thorough list of care instructions, medication schedules, follow-up appointments, and gentle exercises to continue his rehabilitation. When Kaiser hobbled out on a leash, the Pattersons erupted into cheers and applause. Emily knelt, face lit with the biggest grin, and Kaiser leaned into her for support. Noah hopped with excitement, careful not to jostle him. Lisa and John exchanged a tearful smile over the heads of their children. They drove to the new rental house, a modest single story with a small fenced backyard. Boxes were half unpacked, but it was theirs, a place to start over. They had decided not to fight the foreclosure any longer, accepting that letting the old house go was the price of forging a better future. Kaiser sniffed around the new living room, tail gently wagging. Noah brought out a new bed. They had purchased fittingly. It was thick and cushioned for Kaiser's healing body. Emily set out fresh water and dog treats, while Lisa placed gentle hands on the dog's back, guiding him to rest. John stood silently by, absorbing the scene. A wave of gratitude flooded him, gratitude for second chances, for the unwavering bond of family, and for the dog that had taught them all the true meaning of loyalty. Life found a new rhythm. Every morning, Emily helped Kaiser with his prescribed exercises. She'd walk him short distances at first, gradually increasing as he improved. Noah offered moral support, his chatter bringing playful energy that seemed to brighten Kaiser's spirits. John found a new perspective at his hardware store job. It wasn't the high-paying corporate position he once had, but he discovered a quiet satisfaction in helping customers find the right tools and offering practical solutions. Lisa immersed herself in her full-time role at Redwood Veterinary Hospital, absorbing new knowledge every day, assisting with procedures, greeting pets, and comforting anxious owners. Sometimes she'd think of how Kaiser had guided her to this path. Yes, money was tight. They had to budget every grocery trip meticulously, skip unnecessary luxuries, and rely on the generosity of neighbors at times. But they were stable. More importantly, they were happy, connected in a way they hadn't been before. Kaiser continued to gain strength. Dr. Parker pronounced his recovery miraculous, attributing it to the dog's strong bond with his family. "He wants to keep up with you all," she joked, watching him wag his tail in the exam room. One afternoon, Emily asked to speak with John privately. He sat on the backyard porch steps, watching Kaiser doze in a patch of sunlight. Emily joined him, hugging her knees to her chest. "Dad, can we talk about what happened?" she asked softly. John's gaze flicked away. "I'm so sorry, Emily. I don't know if I'll ever forgive myself for—" Emily reached for his hand. "I'm not here to make you feel worse. I need to understand," he sighed, looking at his daughter's earnest face. "I was scared," he admitted. "I felt like I was failing all of you. I thought I had to make some extreme sacrifice to keep us afloat. It was a terrible decision, and I let Kaiser down. I let all of you down." Emily's eyes shone with compassion. We were all scared. But we never wanted to lose him. I'm just glad he found his way back. John nodded, tears gathering at the corners of his eyes. Me too, sweetheart. I love you and Noah and your mum. And I love Kaiser too. I promise I'll spend the rest of my life making that right. They shared a quiet hug, the warmth of reconciliation filling the small backyard. Kaiser opened one eye, as if sensing the healing happening around him, then drifted back to sleep in contentment. Months passed, each day weaving stronger threads of connection within the Patterson family. Their new house felt like a sanctuary, simple, cozy, filled with the sounds of laughter and the comforting presence of Kaiser, who once again roamed freely, nails clicking on the floors. Emily improved her grades, partly fueled by a renewed confidence in her family's resilience. Noah joined a local kids' soccer team, and Kaiser became the team's unofficial mascot, even if he had to watch from the sidelines. Lisa discovered a passion for veterinary work, devouring textbooks in her free time. And John, though still yearning to return to a stable career, found contentment in the day-to-day hustle, grateful for every paycheck that kept the family secure. Kaiser, for his part, never stopped being the loyal companion he always was. If John was anxious about an interview, Kaiser would sit by him, offering quiet comfort. If Lisa came home exhausted from a double shift, Kaiser would nuzzle her hands as if to thank her for caring for so many animals. If Emily or Noah felt stressed about school, Kaiser was their unwavering confidant. One evening, they gathered around the dining table, sharing dinner. The modest meal might have seemed meager by some standards, but to the Pattersons, it was a feast of gratitude. The conversation turned to how far they'd come, from the brink of losing everything to the small triumphs of each new day. John raised his glass of water. "Here's to Kaiser," he said, voice thick with emotion. "The dog who reminded us what loyalty and love really mean." They clinked their glasses, and Kaiser thumped his tail from his favorite spot in the living room, eyes gleaming as though he understood every word. A year later, the Patterson family found themselves not only surviving, but growing. Lisa had been promoted at Redwood Veterinary Hospital. John had landed a better-paying role at a small insurance startup that appreciated his previous experience. Emily was preparing for her junior year, her sights set on a college scholarship. Noah was excelling in soccer, with Kaiser often running gently alongside him for training. Life was far from luxurious, but it was real, raw, and filled with an abiding love. In all their interactions, they carried the lesson that loyalty shouldn't be taken for granted. The community remembered Kaiser's heroism. Sometimes reporters or local newsletters referenced the story of the German Shepherd who saved a boy from a reckless driver. "Couldn't have happened to a more deserving dog," Dr. Parker would say. The Pattersons kept in touch with some of the donors who had assisted them, paying forward what they could to local shelters and charities, reminding themselves that no one stands alone in times of crisis if they open their hearts to others. On a warm afternoon, Emily posted a photo on social media of Kaiser fully healed, bounding across their small backyard in chase of a tennis ball. Her caption read, "A true friend never gives up on you, even when you give up on yourself. #Kaiser, #forever family." The likes and comments poured in, but more importantly, the sentiment was a tribute to the unwavering bond between a dog and the people he loves. The Patterson family had tried to abandon Kaiser once, and it was almost their undoing. Yet through heartbreak, guilt, and adversity, they discovered the true meaning of family and the possibility of redemption. What Kaiser did next, traversing miles back to them, saving Noah's life, and forgiving them so wholeheartedly, left everyone in tears. But more than that, it renewed a sense of faith in the power of second chances. Some say dogs come into our lives to teach us lessons about simplicity, loyalty, and living in the present. For the Patterson family, Kaiser became the living embodiment of resilience and unconditional love, a story that continues to unfold day after day in a home where second chances are cherished and hearts have learned never to take love for granted again. This is more than a story about a family and their dog. It's a universal tale of redemption, love, and the unbreakable bonds that hold us all together. Kaiser's journey proves that second chances can emerge from the darkest moments, showing that forgiveness and loyalty aren't just words, but actions that transform hearts and heal broken homes. If you found yourself moved by Kaiser's unwavering devotion and the powerful lessons the Pattersons learned, please take a moment to reflect on the lives we share with our pets, our families, and our communities. And if this story resonated with you, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. Help spread the message that love can overcome even the most harrowing challenges. Your support can inspire more people to cherish the bonds that truly matter and to never give up on those who depend on us, four-legged or otherwise.